and the stillness did not break. For what had been seen would now be answered. And the seer, Calchas, spoke that the stillness was not without cause, that something had been withheld, and that the road to Troy was not theirs to take freely. And the word turned toward Agamemnon, son of Atreus, for he was the one who had called them there, and to him the host looked, now that the sea would not open. He stood among them, bearing the weight of many kings, and of the vow that had gathered them. And what was spoken to him was not a thing easily set aside. For the stillness had a cause, and the cause required a price. For Agamemnon had slain a stag in the sacred ground of Artemis, and in his pride had boasted above the goddess, and the offence had not passed from her. It was not gold that was asked, nor spoil taken in war, not cattle, nor any gift that men might give and yet remain whole, but something nearer, something bound to the house of the king. And when it was spoken plainly, there was no man among them who did not understand. For the price lay not in the camp, but in his own blood. So a message was sent from Aulis, not as a summons to loss, but as a call to honor. For they said the daughter of the king was to be given in marriage, joined to Achilles, before the host, and beneath the eyes of all. And the word was carried swiftly, not as truth, but as it must be told. And she was brought to Aulis, from her father's house, and from the halls she had known. She came with her mother beside her. They came as to a joining long prepared, not in mourning, but as for a day of honor. The camp received them. The fires burned as before. The ships stood ready. And nothing in that place spoke openly of what had been called for. And word moved among them, not spoken aloud, but carried in the way men looked, and in what was no longer said. And it came at last to Achilles. He stood among them, unseasoned, unworn by years, and more swift to rise where others kept their silence. For the name that had been given was his own, and the one who had been called was Iphigenia. And what had been called a joining was no joining at all, and Achilles would not accept it. His name had not been given for deceit, nor would he see the girl led to death without protest. But Phoenix stood beside him, the old man who had raised him, who had guided his youth before glory had found him. And he laid a hand upon his arm, and counselled patience, where youth would have chosen bronze. But the host did not move with him, for they were already bound. They had come too far, and too much had already been laid upon that shore. The kings stood fast. The army stood with them, and no man would be the one to break it. And she herself did not ask to be taken away. He stood within it, not as one who did not know, but as one who must now answer. And the host held fast, waiting, not for counsel, but for the thing itself.
I am caught between two sorrows. To refuse is ruin. To obey is grief.
So they led her from the place where she had been kept, not as one taken by force, but as one brought forward, knowing now what had been asked of her. The men stepped aside as she passed. No voice rose to stop it. No hand was set against it. And among those who stood apart was the mother who had brought her there and could not turn it aside.
I give my body for the Achaeans. Let Troy be taken.
Iphigenia was brought to the altar, set before it, in the sight of the host. And all that had been spoken came now to its end. And as the moment came upon them, there was no cry. The fire stood ready. The blade was raised. And all eyes were set upon the altar. Then it was not she who lay there, for Artemis had taken the girl from among them and carried her beyond the sight of men. And in her place a stag was given, and the offering was taken, and what had been held back was released. And then the wind came. It moved upon the water and filled the waiting sails. The lines were cast off, the oars took hold, and the long ships turned from the shore. So they departed from Aulis, and the sea opened before them, bearing them on towards Troy. Before they could make war on Troy, they first gave a daughter to the war. I am Calchas.